My name is Bob Babbitt, and welcome to Babbittville Classic Rewind, a collection of my favorite interviews with some of the legends of endurance sports that have aired over the past 3 decades. I'm hoping you will enjoy these interviews as much as I do. As always, endurance lives here. Great to have you in studio with us and without that huddle loser around.
I know. He's up there fighting some wildfires up in Kelowna. It was a pretty intense week, I guess, but they managed to pull off the event today up in Canada, which was amazing. But I did hear at times during the day you could not see 100 meters ahead of you for the smoke.
The smoke, and they raced in there.
And they were racing in it. I guess Andrea Fisher kept making these gestures like she was smoking a cigarette. Yeah. Oh, that was pretty intense.
Wow. And that's what's so tough about that. You've paid your money, you've gone up there, and the race directors have done everything they can, an act of God, something like that. A couple days ago, they were talking about not doing the Canadian Ironman at all.
Yeah, they were considering pulling the whole event because the wind was blowing in the wrong direction. People were being evacuated. And they did everything they could. There was one guy who came in from Kelowna. He came in and he said, I've just stood there and watched my house burn to the ground. I've trained for this all year. You've got to have this race. I have nothing left. I've come to race. You've got to put on this race for me.
And they did.
And they did. Yeah, they put it on. They managed. They had to switch the course around because of the lack of emergency personnel, multiple loops, swim and run. But they kept the bike course intact, though.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, our first guest tonight did a really cool event called oh my God, Land Rover G4 Challenge. And the 4 stands for 4 continents. There was a combination of kayaking and mountain biking and orienteering and driving. That's the cool part. They got to drive.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Did they get to sleep in the nice hotel with a mint
with
on
a
their
pillow? We'll have to ask Nancy Olson if they had to go all night or if they got to do the come in, get a massage, get a mint, and wake
go to
up
the
next
buffet.
morning. Nancy, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing just fine. Have you met Paula before?
I have to say hi to Paula. She's one of my heroes.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Paula. I saw you at a couple of triathlons many years ago in San Diego, and it's always good to see you, and I'm surprised I get to speak with you. So
well, thank you. Yeah, I'm like the second tier host. Yeah, Paul. I always have to fill in for Paul when he's gone out of town.
Hey, Nancy, for you, where did you find out about the Land Rover G4 Challenge, and what was the attraction for you?
Yeah, good question. I wish I could remember exactly how I found out about it. All I remember is that I must have seen it as a pop-up or something like that on Hotmail, and all I remember is that I needed to remember LandRoverG4Challenge.com, and I remembered it, and I went there, and I signed up right away because it just looked like an incredible adventure.
And I was going to say, it started out Lake Las Vegas, and you had 29 U.S. people looking to make it to the final. So basically, they had to pick a U.S., not a U.S. contingent, they picked 2 U.S. characters, and kayaking, mountain bike, rappelling, running. And tell us about the stuff you did with the car.
Yeah, basically, what this did was it married the disciplines of adventure racing with off-road driving.
Yeah.
Competitive driving, and I had never done any of that before in my life.
You hadn't? You see, that would be the thing that would intimidate me, the driving part.
Right.
Yeah, well, exactly, but the thing is, I was in the same boat as everybody else. Really, almost all but maybe one guy had never done any off-road driving before. But that was the point. They wanted to show that average Joes can take these vehicles off-road with a tiny little bit of training and really do some amazing things with them. And I'm an addict now.
The funny thing, Paula, is that
I had a Land Rover for how many years and never saw one bit of dirt.
That's what happens. So people buy them and they never take them off.
I know. I would be tuned
to go off road sometime.
Did you drive on the shoulder at least every once in a while?
No,
never.
No,
never saw dirt at all.
Not one bit of dirt.
God. Well, I'll tell you something. The media characters were allowed to drive too, and we got to drive the different courses. And the thing that impressed me, and I'm sure Nancy's the same way. What an unbelievable vehicle! I mean, these things drive themselves, right, Nancy?
They do. I said it once. I'll say it a million times. They defy gravity.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Paula, there were times where you'd be driving, and the person in the passenger seat would be able to reach out and touch the ground because the car is like on that severe an angle, and they're just reaching out, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get this back? But it just comes back.
Yeah, honestly, Bob, I had no idea what they could do. I didn't know what the big deal about Land Rover
Right.
was, and now I know. They're just phenomenal vehicles that can do anything and go anywhere.
So Lake Las Vegas, and you and another gentleman qualify for the World Qualifier, which was over in England. And basically, the two of you went, and there were athletes from 16 other countries, so 32 folks, to eliminate the other person from the country.
Right. It was myself and a great guy named Kirk Boylston from Calabasas, California. And he and I had the great privilege of going over to the UK to a place called Eastnor Castle. And this is a place where they have a Land Rover adventure center, for lack of a better term, where they train people how to drive off-road. And the UK is muddy, muddy, muddy.
Yeah, I bet.
And we got to have a lot of fun driving every Land Rover model on all these amazing trails through really thick mud that I could barely even walk through. And we just had the time of our lives.
And then you qualify for the championships. And
exactly. Then, basically, we were competing against our fellow countrymen, which was a strange situation because we were really good friends and we were rooting each other on, but yet only one of us would go walk away the winner. But I knew that if he had won, then I would have lost to a really great competitor, so no big deal. And I think he felt the same way about me. So we went out there and just had as much fun as possible. And somehow I came out the victor, and myself and 15 others got to go on a neat trip around the world with Land Rover.
Yeah, but how do they judge this? Is it on cumulative time?
I think it was some sort of a point system, and we may never know exactly, but a lot of it was, of course, driving.
Right.
There was a lot of physical activity there. We did a lot of orienteering, where we ran around with a map and compass, where we ran around with a GPS. We did some mountain biking. We did some more running. We did some fancy rope work. And really what they did with us there was, it didn't feel so much like a competition, because what they were doing, their goal was to train us.
Right.
And they wanted to train both of us, because the one who didn't come out number one would be the alternate in case number one got hurt.
And what's cool, Paula, then they took a month, and they started on the East Coast of the U.S.
Okay.
They went,
I have to say this. We started on Broadway in New York City.
Oh, did you really?
We shut it down on a Sunday morning.
Wow.
Nice.
And, the last time that happened was to film that Tom Cruise movie, Vanilla Sky. And we got to do it without paying the millions of dollars. We shut it down because the city thought it was a neat event, and it was. It was fantastic. And
so they basically had the Land Rovers right there.
They did. They set up a course for us where we had to drive over some really amazing obstacles, that put the vehicle on its side and on two wheels, and we went up and over obstacles and tried not to hit cones, and it was all for time.
Right on Broadway.
Right on Broadway.
Oh.
It was amazing.
Wow. And then from there, where'd you go?
From there, we traveled north into Vermont and New Hampshire, and then eventually into, let's see, where did we end up? Massachusetts.
Right.
And then we flew over to South Africa.
Paula's native country.
Homeland. Whereabout did you fly to?
What an amazing place. Can I just tell you, I'm in love with South Africa.
Did you go to Cape Town?
We started in Cape Town.
Okay.
Yep. And then we did some sort of backcountry stuff.
Wow.
And the people of South Africa were so warm and welcoming, and we'd beep and wave to them, and they were impressed with the crazy orange vehicles, and we were just impressed with their broad smiles, and it was really a lot of fun.
Big animals?
You know what? I didn't see any.
Oh, no.
You went to Africa? What?
Yeah.
God.
Too bad. But I did see some scenes that were straight out of National Geographic. It's an amazingly beautiful country.
In Australia, and then back to Moab?
Australia, and then Moab. And I had never been to Moab. Always wanted to go, just never had done it yet. And now I need to go back.
Man. So, Nancy, what was the toughest part of this?
Yeah.
What was the toughest part of all this?
the toughest part was saying goodbye at the end, I think. But during the competition it was tough. We were on our feet from sometime before 7 a.m. until sometime around 10 p.m. each day for the entire month. And then when we weren't competing, we were flying. And I think the flying actually was probably the hardest part. To most of us, I think it was a lot tougher than the fierce competition because we were sitting there and the feet were swelling and not really able to get the rest that we need to recover. And I think that was it for me. Paula knows when you get stronger when you're resting, and we never really had an opportunity to rest.
Oh. Yeah, I can just imagine you doing a bunch of stuff and then sitting on an aeroplane. Yep. You got no ankles when you get off. You got the plastic legs, and then you got to go again, and it just you never feel like you quite recovered.
They nicknamed me the fruit bat because whenever I was sitting or on an airplane or anywhere, I had my feet up straight up.
Got to get them up. You
That's
have
right.
to.
And so, Nancy, you're in the Marine Corps?
I'm in the Marine Corps. I just came off of active duty, so I'm now an inactive reservist. But I was on active duty as a public affairs officer at the Pentagon most recently. Just left there July 15th.
Wow! Now, are you on the West Coast for a while?
I am. Actually, this is a nice time to tell you that one great thing leads to the next, and my next great adventure is a drive around the world with a not-for-profit organization. This benefits Parkinson's disease.
Right.
We are driving for 9 months. We start in San Jose, California, and we head south through Mexico, Central America, South America, all the way to the very tip down there by Tierra del Fuego.
So are you stopping here in San Diego to come in studio with us?
We are going to stop in Orange County.
Yeah.
In Irvine at Land Rover.
Oh, right.
For our kickoff there. We have a kickoff at the Parkinson's Research Institute, and then we have a kickoff there at Land Rover in Irvine.
Well, good for you.
And then we ship the cars from South America over to Australia. We drive north through Australia, Indonesia, Asia, Russia. My favorite, the part I'm really looking forward to is Tibet.
Man.
And then we drive across Siberia, back across the Straits. We're shipping whenever there's water, obviously, but we're shipping across into Alaska and driving back through Canada and back home to San Jose.
Paula's got a little time off.
Hey, Paula, listen, we've got a program called Take Me With You. You can join us for like a week if you want.
Oh, there you go. Take me with you.
In the location of your choice.
Do Antarctica, Paula.
I tell you what.
That's the only continent we're skipping.
Oh,
good for you.
So who's going with you on this big adventure?
Well, we don't know yet. We've got a lot of people who want to go, but we haven't opened the registrations yet. It'll open soon on drivearoundtheworld.com.
Drivearoundtheworld.com.
And this is all part of a Land Rover deal too.
Well, Land Rover, actually, this is the brainchild of a gentleman and his wife, Nick and Shanda Baggerly.
Yeah.
Who Parkinson's has affected their family. It's also affected my family. His sister has it, my grandfather, and a couple of the other members have relatives with the disease. And it's just a neat way to open people's eyes about the disease and promote giving so that research can continue. And it's just going to be an amazing adventure, I think.
DriveAroundTheWorld.com.
Right.
Love that.
Visit the site. It's a great website.
Okay, cool.
That sounds like
Hey, Nancy, congrats on everything. And how'd you do in the finals?
Well, I hate to tell people this. I came in 15th.
Okay.
But I feel real good about that because my test is, who wanted to team up with me?
Right.
And all the good ones wanted to pick me first, and I felt really honored that they did. The top 8 chose from the bottom 8 in the competition. Scoring I won't even get into, but I was always picked early by the good ones.
There you go.
I feel very proud about
that. The scoring sounds a little complicated.
Yeah.
It's very complicated.
Did one person eventually win this?
They win a Land Rover.
You know what? Sometimes the best man doesn't win. In this case, the best man did win. I'm very glad that Rudy Tulin of Belgium, he's a fighter pilot in that country, came home with the prize. And he's just a great guy, a great athlete, and he played the game just right. And I'm real pleased that he was the winner.
Hey, Nancy, thanks so much for taking so much time. Congrats on everything. And drivearoundtheworld.com. You go from one adventure right to another.
Yeah, please look at the site. It's fantastic.
That sounds
fun. We'll do that.
I'm a very lucky person to get to do both of those.
Fantastic. Events. Congratulations. That is
Paula.
Awesome.
Paula, pleasure talking with you.
You too.
Thanks.
Hey, Nancy, take care.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a quick time out, and then we're going to spend some quality time with the 8-time Ironman champion, going on a little trip back in her career. That music is our house band, Off by One. You can check them out at offbyoneonline.com.
All right. Our house band.
Our house band, isn't that good?
As opposed to our house dances.
That's right. We've got
Which
the house
we actually do have some house dances. Yeah,
do.
it's just too bad people can't see that.
They can't see them. They're really...
I know.
Oh, they're hot.
I know.
Good
It's unbelievable.
Stuff. Hey, Paula, with the 25th anniversary Ironman coming up, and actually my lovely wife Heidi was saying the other day that, gosh, I remember Paul at the end of last year's race said, never again. I am so done. I am not doing this thing again. I am so over this.
Yeah.
So obviously you're not that over this. You're doing it again. One more time. What are you, Dave Scott?
No. Listen, Dave just talks about it. He doesn't actually do it.
That's true.
Most of the time, he puts in the training and never actually steps up to the line.
Yeah.
I usually don't do the training, but I come to the line anyway.
Right.
But it's a day. It's actually a day-to-day thing. There are days that I feel just so good, and I have these little stretches that I feel really awesome. But I got to be quite frank. I wake up a lot of mornings when I know that I need to go out and do a long bike ride, and it's tough. It's tough. I just go,
been there, done that.
Been there, done that. Don't really want to go out and do the ride. And then I usually what I've done is I organize to go with somebody, so that I have to do that. For me to go out and do a long bike ride right now is by myself. It's not happening. No. So I'll go meet Heather and we'll go, and then I'll be very psyched because it goes well. But yeah, it's. I couldn't give you a real reason as to why I'm thinking that I'm going to toe the line this year, other than it's the 25th.
25th, and maybe a little closure.
Yeah, that's what I say every year. I get a little closure. Yeah, a little closure. Yeah.
When you look back, Paula, you went over for the first time in '85, and now you won that, right? Then you win that at a race in South Africa. Your trip over.
Yeah,
there?
Well, that was just a prize. It was a prize for winning this event. It was the biggest event in South Africa,
right? Which
was a long course triathlon, not quite an Ironman. And the first place prize was a trip to do the Hawaiian Ironman, and that's how I got there.
And did you have any thought at that time, gosh, this triathlon thing is really cool. I'm loving this. I'm really excited to do Ironman. Or were you thinking, a trip to Hawaii?
It was a little
both.
It was a little of both. At first, it was a trip to Hawaii, and then as I started to do some training for it, and pick up the magazines and read about the American superstars and sponsors, I go, well, that would be pretty cool. It beats beats a real job.
Beats a real job,
It beats
right?
a real job, yeah, absolutely.
What were you doing job-wise?
I was working in the biggest property company in South Africa. They own most of the industrial parks and shopping centers, and I was in the research department doing a lot of their consumer research and a lot of their sort of financial research. So I was sort of it wasn't enthralling at all.
So it wasn't hard to pass up to go,
No.
I'm going to go take a little time off.
No, it wasn't hard to pass up at all.
First time out, you finished third.
Yeah.
And did that surprise you to do so well?
It did surprise me, actually. It surprised me because I had never gone the distance before. I had never ridden 112 miles. I had never done a 112-mile bike ride in my training, and I never run a marathon. So it was sort of a shock because I had never gone the distance. So there was a little bit of apprehension on my side as to how I was going to handle, completing the race. So I guess completing it was obviously foremost, but it was, I was always ambitious. So
sure.
I thought, well, I'm just going to get in there and give it a whirl. And as the day went on, it kind of got better and better for me and got worse and worse for other people.
Did you feel that there was some sort of connection between you and that island right away?
Interestingly enough, the first time I got there, the first week I was training there, I went out on the Queen K Highway and I had, like a bathing T-shirt and some bike shorts. And I remember heading down the highway just going, what is the big deal? This is so great. And I remember just flying along.
Yeah.
And then, I turned around at the Sheraton at Waikoloa. I just go, I'd made it out there in some super duper time. And then I turned around and I got my first dose of the wind. And I was like, oh, okay. But then that week I went out in my bathing suit and went out and rode, and I got a second-degree sunburn.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I got a second-degree sunburn, and I kind of crashed off my bike. I had my head down, and so it was sort of it was an interesting first week that I had there. I mean, I remember being laid up in the hotel with aloe leaves on my back because my sunburn was so severe. But the Europeans haven't figured that out yet.
Right. They're just still out there.
They're still out there in their Speedos. Yeah.
So you come back in '86, and that was the first year there's prize money.
First year prize money, yes.
And you end up winning the race.
I ended up winning. I got to tell you, that was $1 million for me.
Oh yeah, $12,000.
It was $12,000. It was fantastic. I was set for life.
Yeah, and there was the Puntous sisters were still obviously Sylvia had won the race twice, and her sister Patricia had been second.
Yeah.
So one was in front of you, one was behind you.
Yes.
You heard at the end of the bike that one had been DQ'd.
Exactly.
But you didn't know which one.
I didn't know which one.
So you didn't know if it was the one who was chasing you or the one you were chasing.
Well, actually, that year I got off the bike ahead of them, started running, and they both
they both
ran by me at one point. And then as the run progressed, I caught back up and passed
Sylvia.
One of them, but I didn't know actually. I still couldn't tell the difference. I passed one of them, and one of them remained in front. And I remember sort of closing down the gap, and I was coming up that last hill into town. I could see her, but I wasn't going to be able to close the gap all the way. But I wasn't clear who was in front, who was behind, but I knew one of them had been disqualified, and I didn't know whether it was the one in front or the one behind.
And then when you come, usually you finish second, there's no banner across the line.
Yeah,
there's no finish banner.
Correct.
But there was a finish banner.
There was a
so
finish
at that
banner.
point, okay, something's going on.
Something's going on. There was just something was going on right when I crossed the line. People were like, oh, there's been a problem. We need you for an interview. You've won the race. And, it was almost like they'd just axed Patricia out already.
Did you see her?
I did see her.
She was like crying.
She was crying. She was, I was in a state of complete confusion.
Absolutely.
At that point, and I didn't really know what to do, what to say. I didn't know, they were going. We had asked her not to start the run because we had told her she was disqualified, but they had insisted on continuing on.
Right.
And, I was. I didn't really know. What do you do in a situation like that? You go, oh, no, please.
You keep the win.
No, you keep that. And you keep it. But you know what I mean? If they weren't going to give it to her, one way or the other, she was out.
Right.
So it was a tough way to win.
Right.
Win my first one. And, yeah.
Did you feel, obviously, you win that way. And it's a positive to win. You get $12,000, but in the back of your mind, you still got to be thinking, okay, people are going to think this is a fluke because of this whole thing. So I need to come back and win this race.
Yeah.
The next year, you come over, and Erin Baker, who at that time was really probably the preeminent woman in triathlon.
Easily,
Short distance, long distance.
Everything.
She just won everything.
Yeah.
And she caught you and one of the Puntous sisters during a run.
Yeah.
And wins the race. But I think probably the most important aspect of it was that the Puntous sisters ran to each aid station, walked the aid station.
Yeah.
They still ran low 3 hours, like 3:07 to 3:10, right in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And you folled that philosophy because that worked.
Yeah, it was
obviously.
nice.
And, it's nice.
It was nice to take a little walk every mile. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. But Erin ran by you while you were bent over stretching.
Yeah.
And probably the thing that hit you the most was, you know what? She's not stopping at the aid station.
Exactly.
She's running this whole thing.
Well, you know what? It got that year. The thing that got to me was that I had led the race until about 22 miles of the run. I had led the bike ride. I had led that run. And Sylviane had caught up to me, and then we were running together.
Right.
And I stopped for a little longer at one of the aid stations, and Erin came running by. And it made me realize that I had stuck out front for so long.
Right.
With literally 4 miles to go. So cumulatively, all those walks along the way up till 22 miles really was
the
difference between winning and losing that race. And that, I went away and said, I really should have been continuing to run because I could win the race if I just kept moving, because she never caught me until, I was out there all day.
So did that become your philosophy from then on? I am running.
I'm running
through the aid stations, take my stuff, what I need, do it like a car wash, and get through it.
Keep moving. You got to keep moving. It was just a case of keep moving. Not to say that I didn't walk every now and again at an aid station if I really, really needed to get something, or I couldn't get at what I needed, or get some Coke or Gatorade or something. Occasionally I would take a few steps, but there was no sort of mandated walk at every aid station after that.
So 87, she wins. 86, you won. And so at this point, people were probably still thinking, okay, Paula won, but it was sort of a fluke. Puntous was DQ'd, and then Erin won the next year.
Yeah.
So then you come into 88.
Yeah.
And 88 was one of the most phenomenal performances by any athlete at any time. You go 9:01.
Yeah.
You finish 11th overall, which was unbelievable. I don't think a woman had finished top 20, top 25.
Yeah.
And people were calling one of the greatest performances of all time for women in comparison, because you were within half an hour of the winning time for men.
That's
Scott Moore was 8:32. You were 9:01.
That's right.
And the perception of Paula Newby-Fraser immediately changed.
Yeah.
This is a woman who is dominant at the Ironman Triathlon World Championship, which is the most important stage. How important was that race for you?
Well, that was, that one. It's hard to really, to put it in perspective, I guess, because it happened. It was a day that just happened. My training had really undertaken a big overhaul in 88. Yeah. I really overhauled it, and 1988 was when I decided that this wasn't just going to be this thing that I had come from South Africa, moved to California to do for a few years and dabble around and then go back to a job. I decided in 88 that this was actually going to be my career. In order to do that, I needed to do the right things. I remember getting a heart rate monitor. There was a big training overhaul. Spent a lot of time just getting on the line at short distance races with the best people.
Right.
I followed that USTS circuit.
Yep.
Diligently just got out there, week in and week out, and just bashed it out, getting my speed. And, I guess, I just, in those last few weeks, the speed of my long distance training, obviously had taken a big jump. And so on race day, it was a very, very weird, almost sort of Fellini,
surreal type of day.
It was a total Fellini situation, because I'm going along, thinking this is hard. It's an Ironman, but it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
And, I remember running along and all of a sudden, my running, because I wasn't. Now, all of a sudden, if you accumulated all those walks from the previous years, how much time that was, all of a sudden, my marathon time had dropped below, 3:10 and gone into the 3:0 something. Right. And all that was gone from a 3:20 into the 3:0s, was taking away all the walking time.
That's amazing.
From the year, yeah. Literally. Because, you think of burning up 30 to 45 seconds.
25 times.
Which is a lot of time. So, and, that was just, it just sort of flowed on that day. It was a great day. I mean, 88 was a good day. Yeah. It was a good day. I think Erin was somewhat overtrained, actually, coming into that race. Because now you read back at some of Melina's diaries of, his Ironman training. They had been out in Palm Desert just doing
ridiculous
stuff.
Just
the gruel-a-thon out
hours,
there. Ridiculous. And I think, she was cramping. I mean, honestly, I think she came to the line overtrained. And I came to the line at peak speed and peak fitness that year.
What's interesting is, obviously, in a sport like triathlon, it's a small pie in terms of who's going to make a living and who isn't.
Yeah.
And you've got yourself and Erin Baker at the Ironman distance, similar to Mark Allen and Dave Scott.
Yeah.
You were the game. What was the relationship like, or was a relationship between you and Erin?
There really wasn't much of a relationship.
Yeah.
It didn't exist because we didn't live in the same city. She lived in New Zealand, and when she was here, she lived up in Colorado. Right. So our interaction was very, very minimal, very minimal, other than when I saw her at races, and it was just very cordial. Hi, how are you doing? If that. And that was pretty much where it ended. I can honestly say that I never, ever developed a relationship with her, and I don't think that she cared to take the time or really was interested in getting to know who I was. I was just the competitor. Right. And I felt pretty much the same way about her. Right. I didn't, I knew a bit about what was going on in her life, but more or less she was the competition, so she was the enemy.
She was the enemy.
She was the enemy. She was the motivation. She was the enemy.
Were you when you were out training? Did
Absolutely.
you think about that?
All the time.
Erin Baker's out running today.
Absolutely.
Out running.
It wasn't even that. It was more, I need to do the right thing for me because, I've got to stay on top of my game because I want to be able to beat her, because I knew that I would never be able to beat her at a short distance race, because I think that she is a far more gifted athlete. She was a much faster athlete than I was, stronger, but for some reason, once you push the distances over the 7-hour range, you know what I mean, it was a great equalizer, and I became competitive with her,
sure.
and I wanted to maximize that because, I towed the line with her in some short distance races. It was, not happening.
Well, it's similar to a Mark Allen, Dave Scott.
Yeah,
Mark could dust Dave all day long.
Yeah.
And somehow, when they went to Kona, you threw all that crap out.
Exactly.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Dave owned Mark on the Big Island.
Yeah.
And to a certain degree, you owned Erin over
exactly.
there. Yeah.
Exactly. We raced at some other races. We raced against each other in Japan, in Canada.
Now, Canada was an eye-opener because she had a phenomenal run.
She had one of the all-time best marathons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she run sub 3 hour there?
She went sub 250. She ran 248 or 249. She came by me. I had something like an 11 or 12-minute lead coming off the bike. I'm running along going, there is no way.
Right.
This woman is going to be able to close this gap. And it was amazing. It took about 10 or 11 miles. She came by and she looked like she was running a 5K. It was just phenomenal to see her go by.
And mentally, that's got to be like, oh my God.
Crushing. It was crushing. It was absolutely crushing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I was like, how do you compete with that?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, through the early 90s, you and Mark, it seemed like every year, you and Mark Allen, you and Mark Allen, you and Mark Allen. And then, of course, your Ironman is expanding into more parts of the world.
Yes.
You're doing more and more Ironman races. You've won 23 Ironman races around the globe. Was there a point where you felt like, I'm starting to burn on this, I'm doing too much stuff? Or did it keep it fresh doing the short distance? Because a lot of the athletes seem to, they do so much volume once they become an Ironman person, and they move away from doing the sprint races.
You know what? That's exactly it. And that's what it happened in 1995 when I was up in Boulder and actually, interestingly enough, had hooked up with Mark Allen.
Right.
And that was the beginning, I think, sort of the beginning of the end for me, because I somehow got onto his whole thing. And, he was looking to make that his final Ironman.
Right.
And, I definitely vested a lot of my time with him, into him, both Paul and myself. And, I did quite a bit of training with him. But I also got sucked into that mentality, like here's the problem. He was at the end, and so he was like, oh, you know what, I just got to get this done this year. You know what I mean? It's just so much hard work. And I'm going, yeah, it's so much hard work. And then I was heading out that door, doing things I'd never done before, riding more than I'd ever ridden before. All of a sudden thinking, you know what, it'd be kind of cool to ride 500 miles a week for a few weeks. Something that it would, you know what I mean? That would
really
be
cool.
That would be like, 2 or 3 weeks worth of mileage for me under normal circumstances. Right. So,
oh my God,
I got into that, and that, I think, pretty much put me over the edge. And that was when I started to think, well, he's talking about being done. I need to start thinking about being done too.
Right.
But, I didn't really need to.
No, you were at a different point.
I was. And the problem was, though, I had already gone over the edge with the training and trying to emulate those guys up in Boulder. I got sucked into that Boulder thing. I got sucked into the mileage thing and got away from
doing the sprint races and doing the rest of it.
Just you know what I mean. When they would go out to be riding, 5 hours, I go, really 2.5 is fine.
Yeah.
And I actually remember that when I was in Boulder, I went out with Erin once or twice on bike rides, and she was going, I want to go out and ride 120 miles. And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm not riding 120 miles. 90 will be fine for me.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like we'd sort of split the difference, because the guys were going like, of course, 140 or something idiotic.
Yeah.
They were going longer, and she didn't want to go longer. But, I always was an hour or two less than what everybody else was doing.
Right.
And I guess being around so many of those athletes up in Boulder, I started to question myself. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, you certainly weren't lacking for success at that point. Going to 95, you won 7 times.
Yeah, I wasn't at all. And, and that, boy, was that a giveaway in 95.
So, and when you came in that 95 race, it just seemed like it was one of those days where everything the stars were not aligned.
No, they were not aligned.
Everything was wrong.
Yeah, but it was my stars were not aligned.
Right.
You know, in my head, it was great because that was an easy win for me. It most certainly was a walk of a win. I had such a huge lead coming off the bike. I didn't even require a monumental effort on that marathon, and it just required having my brain, functioning, which it hadn't. I'd sort of I'd gotten a little bit burned out. I'd gotten into a bad space, and which was unfortunate because that was, if you had to say what is the most frustrating part about my Ironman career, that has to be the biggest frustration. It's not. I don't think it's something I'm proud of, or I realize it's a monumental moment for the media, but it is very, very frustrating. Even sometimes today, I just go, oh, how could I? I threw. That was there. You go throw that one away. Yeah. That was a big throwaway. That one, absolutely.
You had a huge lead off the bike. Huge lead off the bike.
I was still in the lead with half a mile to go, with 400 meters to go, literally from the finish line. So I mean, if ever there was a race that was thrown away, that was it.
Did you not eat? Did you not drink?
I had stopped taking in calories, and I just got into a worse and worse hole. My head was
gone,
way up my butt. Yeah. it was somewhere, but it was not functioning.
Brian just looked up because he goes, "There's a good soundbite." Right, Brian? Huh? He's nodding his head, going, "I'll save that one."
Oh yeah.
Wow. And then, of course, when you basically looked like a fighter out on your feet.
It was horrible. It was horrible. It was, I don't even like to see it.
Sure,
of course, the media love to show, but I think it's awful.
Of course,
yeah.
It's you. It's hard. But the part that's amazing to me is obviously to come back from that, to come back the next year. And what impressed me the most was you're going up against a young gal named Natasha Bodman, who is really doing her first race there, and obviously has that same thing, that same love of it that you had.
She has the gift,
the experience that you had your first time there with. Wow, this is a great place. Look at how beautiful, and the wind and the rest of it. And I don't know if you did the flying like an eagle crap, but still.
Yeah.
She had the love of it, and you realized that you weren't just going to go off the front. You were going to stay in the mix all day long and let somebody else lead. Let Karen go out there. Let Natasha go out there. And all you wanted to do was be a factor.
Yeah.
And if you were a factor, you knew you could win.
Yeah.
And rather than think in terms of, I have to win the race on the bike, you were content to be there with everybody else in the run and see what happens.
Yeah.
Was that something you consciously thought about going into that race?
I mean, I just thought about just sort of staying within myself and not getting, because that's what had been my undoing the year before, was the need to dominate and the absolute desperation to win.
Right.
And win or nothing. It was winning or total failure. If I didn't win, it was a total failure.
Yeah.
So I got past that somewhere along my way in 96. I got past the winning is everything. I go, I've had a great career. I'm happy now to be out in the mix. If my training is solid, if I'm healthy, I have as good a shot as anybody.
Right.
And, it was great to see somebody who has the gift. I mean, Natasha has the gift of doing the Ironman races. She is a phenomenon.
When I look back at that 95 year, the one thing that hit me was at the press conference when you said, "This is it. I'm retiring."
Yeah.
And
that was I got to tell you,
that's part of your head up your
ass thing. You know what? That was a lot. I tell you what, that was a lot of Mark
rubbing off
on me. I spent a lot of time, and when I tell you, I spent a lot of solo time with him preparing. And Mark, being the psychic vampire that he is, and what made him so successful, somehow I got kind of drawn into that. I mean, we would be out there, I would go ride, I would see him swimming, not that we did everything together, but we would, go eat dinner at night.
Sure.
And I got into his trip because Julie had come back to San Diego with Matt and left him to train. And, Paul was doing what he was doing. And so we were up in Boulder and we were kind of hanging, and I got into his trip. That was, that was going to be it for him. So I was like, well, this has to be it for me. Yeah. Somehow I got onto his trip, and well,
you guys were sort of linked throughout the 90s. You're both winning the race, and it was Paula, Mark, and Dave, and Dave was already done, basically.
Yeah, it was like, it's always like, okay, so what's new? What's new? What are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, well, you know what you got to do? You got to get one of those new speed suits for the swim. You've got to do this. You got to do that, and that's kind of how it was. And so we became very linked.
Type of thing.
Yeah, and it became this paranoia. He'd get on the phone. Hey, so what's new? Anything new? Is there anything else? I'm just like, he really is. I mean, he was truly the psychic vampire.
Well, how many times have you been with somebody where you go on a trip and they go, God, my back hurts, my back. And the more you hear it, all of a sudden, your back hurts. And race day, they're fine. Yeah. So he was fine on race day.
Exactly.
And you were a mess.
Yeah, I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. But you know, I mean, it's certainly not his fault. It's my fault. But that was what had happened. And I was like, and I mean, even the fact that I sat up there and said, okay, I'm done after this. I mean, how idiotic is that to say that?
That's a lot of pressure.
Prior to the race to say I'm done. How stupid
because
is that?
Basically it's saying after I win this one, I'm
done. Exactly. Yeah. Which is what was, he didn't say it.
Right.
But that's exactly what was going on in his head because he was like, I'm coming to get this done and then I'm done.
Right.
You know, which was, and he had to pull out all the stops to get that.
Oh my God, he did.
Yeah.
Well, he was in the opposite position you were.
Yeah.
He was 13 minutes back, and he had to make up 30 seconds a mile to beat Thomas Hellriegel, and you were in the opposite position with Karen. And I know from Karen's perspective, that's not the way somebody wants to win the Ironman.
Well, no.
You know, I mean, you don't want to benefit from somebody else's misery. And
it's sport though, and it's competition. Right. So you know what? If somebody's stumbling and falling, it's there's a medical team run on by. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
No, really, especially that close to the finish line. I mean, I know she was like concerned, but hey, you know, the Ironman's up for grabs right here. Right. You know, she had to like step on my foot to go by. That's fine. It is a competition at the end. So
how hard was it for you to get up and walk to the finish? I mean, for being such a proud athlete and. Yeah, obviously, you have a lot of respect for the event. Yeah. So walking across the line and saying, hey, at this point, I'm like everybody else. I just want to get across the line.
It was, you know what, it was really hard. I almost wanted to drop out. But when all was said and done, I was very glad that I crossed the finish line because not finishing as opposed to getting a fourth place, almost a third, Fernanda,
she shoved you out of the way across the line.
2 inches from the line, yeah.
She tap danced on your head across the line.
I tell you, I didn't know. I said, nonsense, you knew. They'd run out there and told you. Of course you knew.
Oh, that's funny.
But, it was, I'm very, very glad that I crossed that finish line.
Yeah, well, the deal is that it shows respect for the race and it shows respect for your other competitors.
Well, you know, there's this guy out there that I run into him all the time at the races. He goes, you know, you need to thank me for your finish in 95 because the ambulance that was being called to get you
had to stop and pick him up,
had to go and get him because they were busy loading me into the ambulance. He goes, had I not been collapsing and needed the ambulance, they would have gotten to you and you probably would have gotten into that ambulance and never finished. So he always, I saw him just a few weeks ago, fine man. He goes, you remember?
And you're like, yeah, shut up.
Whatever.
Mr. Degree Ironman is doing great.
He's doing awesome. Yeah. Steve Kata. He was out there this morning at the Imperial Beach Triathlon
and duathlon. And I heard you knocked off Kenny Souza in the duathlete.
Absolutely.
So he was second woman?
He was second woman, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Knock him off.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. He needs to knock off a few pounds along with that, too.
That guy wasted 130 pounds. I was 155.
I know. I go, that must be hurting on that second run.
Now, are you a Survivor fan?
Oh, watched every series.
Really?
Yeah, everyone.
Well, Deena Bennett was on this last Survivor in the Amazon. Deena, how are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you doing?
Just fine. Now, have you met Paula Newby-Fraser before?
No, I haven't, but I would love to.
Yeah.
I saw her on some, it was a video of Idaho at Coeur d'Alene.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't racing, thank goodness.
No, you were doing the announcing of the professional winners. I just saw that today.
Oh.
At a club meeting.
Oh, good for you. Now, Deena, tell us, how did Survivor gig come along for you?
You know, it was an incredible experience. It's one of those things that you would never pass up, the experience, because it's something that very few people get to do, and I was honored that I was chosen. The number one question is always, hey, did you have fun? Not really.
No, yeah.
It
looks miserable.
It looks miserable.
It's an incredibly difficult experience. I lost 27 pounds, and I was only out there for 27 days.
Wow.
And
I think I want to go.
I think Bob needs to go.
I'm going there, baby.
I'm good. We need to call Mark Burnett.
Brian says he needs to go, too.
It's the Burnett diet, man. I'm telling you, it's the bomb.
He should do a diet book. Go to a small island, hang there for a little while, and eat nothing.
Exactly. And then don't have anybody film you because you get a little crabby.
Now, were those camera guys just in your face 24/7?
You know, they are, because it's you want the world to get a peek at what this is like, and so they are obviously there. But I would say after about day 4, day 5, you just forget about them, and you just kind of go on, and they're part of the landscape.
Are there ever times where you're thinking, oh, I know that's going to be on camera? That was such a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, you have to mind your P's and your Q's out there, and especially if you're kind of in the public eye like I am. And but sometimes you just don't care.
Now, public eye, what do you do for a living?
I am a deputy district attorney.
Yes, I remember you're the district attorney.
Yeah, I'm the mean one.
That's correct.
Oh, you're the mean one. Were you mean on the show?
No, I wasn't mean on.
She was mean on the show.
I'm very forward.
Oh,
she was very forward.
Paula says you were mean on the show.
What I want to know really is are you consciously having to watch your P's and Q's all the time?
You do.
Or do you actually just kind of like let it go and go, screw it up?
I haven't slept in a while. I don't care.
I was pretty honest in the confessionals. When we were talking about, I was making fun of the girls washing their buffs, and I was thinking about shelter.
Right.
I was commenting on somebody, not doing so well physically, and I was pretty open and honest in my confessional. So the way that I was thinking, the viewing public got to see exactly what was going through my mind.
Now, Deena, did your triathlon training, did that help you?
You're sitting on my butt not eating?
Yeah. Do you guys, did you work out at all there? What did you have to do?
No, because you don't have any energy. You're not eating. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, well, so what were you eating behind the scenes? Behind the scenes, there was no behind-the-scenes eating. And I want to say that what was nice was that I was overweight, but because I had been doing triathlons, I was in pretty good condition.
Right.
So I was prepared for some of the physical challenges that came our way.
Did you have any of that? The thing that always bothers me about those shows where they have you like eating worm larvae and all that type of crap. Did you have much of that?
I actually lost because it came down to the two of us. It came down to Matt and I refused to eat the tree-boring beetle larva or whatever it was. It was spawned truly out of the pit of hell. Oh. And I did not eat that. But I did eat quite a few Baba Shoe worms, crickets, and beetles or something like that.
Oh, how does that stuff go down?
It doesn't.
You still feel it days later.
No, it just doesn't.
They're like tap dancing in there. And that's just, you assume that they check this stuff out and make sure that your body can actually handle
You're
this.
Not going to die.
No, we didn't die, but I tell you, it's a physical toll. A lot of viewers, they remember when Michael Skupin fell into the fire because he passed out. And
right.
Those blackouts are very real. Even for somebody who went in with like over 30% body fat, those blackouts happen.
Really?
And you completely lose the consciousness for a half a millisecond until your body adjusts to standing up or sitting down or something.
It's just from not eating and sleep deprivation and all that stuff?
Yeah, from dehydration. We're in the middle of the Amazon with the longest river in the world or whatever, and we were dehydrated and depleted of all of minerals and vitamins and stuff.
Boy, that Mark sure likes to hurt people, doesn't he?
Does. You know what I find very interesting? Did you see yourself in a particular role? Because I noticed in all of these shows, he has a certain mix of stereotypes that he likes to get into that.
I did not fulfill the role of the sex model.
No, well, there were plenty on you. There were actually a few on your show.
That's not what I read.
I became an international TV sensation by keeping my clothes on.
That's correct.
My role was obviously as the strong one to make sure that that things got done in camp and that we all kind of stayed together and survived. I think I was just a juxtaposition from Jenna and Heidi.
But when you look back at the shows, that the person who takes that role very rarely lands up in the final two at the end. And I mean, did you knowingly realize that you were filling that role?
Then you're going to get booted.
That you're going to get booted because it never seems to be the person that takes the role that you took on the show that lands up in that final two.
Yeah, the exception would be, of course, Richard Hatch, the very first winner of Survivor.
But he was naked.
But he got naked, though.
He got naked, and they all like that.
No, I did. I fulfilled a role. The thing is that I have a Type A personality, and I don't have the ability to fly into the radar. I just kind of had to keep it in wraps as best I could. And obviously, some of the early booties for the jury were all very strong people. You just go Roger, Dave, Deena, and Alex.
Right.
We were all very strong people, and people that went further, like Butch, like Christy, the deaf girl.
Yes.
They were
flying below the radar.
Exactly. I just don't have one of those personalities. It would be great if I could. I just, I call a palm tree, and if I don't like something, I'm going to tell you.
Hey, Deena, thanks so much, and congrats on Survivor.
Yeah,
How
congratulations.
Cool. Thank you very much. It was fun being on.
All right. Deena Bennett from Survivor, Amazon. Paula, you're going on Survivor soon. I think it'll be awesome.
I doubt it.
Hey, thanks so much for coming in and sitting in for Mr. Huddle. I think he's going to be off the bat.
Well, I'm going to drive around the world, so.
Yeah, you go.
There you go.
All right. Hey, thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Babbittville Classic Rewind. And don't forget to check out our huge library of interviews with the most decorated triathletes in history on Breakfast with Bob.
Ask me what I want to be, and I will say I will be